So, our next speaker will be Hongmei Li-Byarlay, and she, bless her heart, she filled in. We had Dr. Julianne Gross was going to be here. She had some things in life that prevented her from coming. I contacted Hongmei, and she agreed to come. And so this is a great opportunity for us to hear Hongmei from Central State University. So big round of applause for Hongmei.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Where's Kim? Oh my gosh. What a wonderful talk. You know, if you don't do bee inspection later, I know another job for you. Do you know what it is? Stand-up comedy. You got so many laughs out of our audience, right? So yeah, let me know when you have a show started. Yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. So at first I would like to say thank you for Jerry's invitation. I'm so humbled to be here. My name is Hongmei Li-Byarlay. I'm an associate professor of entomology at Central State University. Does any of you know where Central State University is at? Yay! So we're in Ohio. We're near Dayton, Ohio. The city we're in is called Wilberforce, Ohio. It's pretty much between Columbus and Cincinnati. So today I am really happy to be here. I want to tell you the stories of myself, how I become an entomologist, how I become going to bee research. Well, so earlier I got a chance to look at the history of AI root. And it's so fascinating to be here. And I realized A, B, C, and X, Y, Z actually started with the AI root, right? Yeah, many years ago. Today, I want to tell you the A, B, C, and X, Y's of my life. But these are kind of main points I wanted to show you through different stories. To be brave, be determined, set your goals on where you want to go, and gather your group support. And most important thing is be happy. So that's me. I was a little kid in that picture. This is in Tianjin, China. That's my aunt. That's me in 6th grade in Great Wall. So our school had a field trip. We went to the Great Wall. And what I want to tell you from these pictures are that I am an outdoor girl. I am really outgoing. I love to play. I love to look at all the nature things. So why am I interested in bugs? Because since I'm a little kid, I love to ask questions in school. I remember one day in middle school, I was like 7th grade, and my teacher, it's a math teacher, stopped me in the hallway, and he said, "Oh yeah, you are Hongmei, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Am I in trouble? And he said, "Oh no. You are the one asked me all the questions in the class. That is very good. Like, keep doing it." I'm like, "Really? Okay, well, I'm just gonna ask you questions more." But that moment was kind of, I remembered of that moment and realized the teachers like the kids who ask them a lot of questions. So that means I have curiosity, I have questions, I'm always thinking about things all the time. I'm also an outdoor kid. So in Tianjin, China, that's where I grew up. Actually, when I was little, since I was 2 years old, my mom actually sent me to my grandparents' house. So I lived with my grandparents since I was 2 years old. But however, my grandparents were in the city. But in the summer, my parents live in the countryside. And I got every summer to go back home and then enjoy the summer outside. Like now kids go to summer camps. I had to get my kids summer camps and do things. And I was thinking, wow, back then I had a really luxury time. I got 3 months of free summer camp just in my parents' house. So this is my hometown. I'm from Tianjin, China, just next to Beijing. Everything you can see shipped to northern China. I go to the port. That's the port city. That's why I love seafood. The population is 15,621,000 people and more growing. And that's me and my sister and my cousin at the train station when they just started with the brand new train station. And that's my mom, and that's my dad. So this is a city map of Tianjin here. But I want to tell you for the rest of my life, where I am really passionate about outdoor, in science, and work with people, all because where I grew up and from my hometown, it's really good environment. So that's a picture to show you kind of where the countryside of my parents look like. A lot of crops, they grow corn, they grow wheat. A lot of time I help in the summer when I went back home, I helped my mom in the field. And I still, when my mom came to the United States, he planted a garden, and we sort of have a competition to see who have, best vegetables or cucumbers growing. And she totally still beat me. So I'm still learning how to gardening. That picture is me, I think it's 7th grade, maybe 5th grade. Yeah. So in China, we go middle school 1 to 3, and the high school 1 to 3. But in the United States, it's K to 12. Well, the reason for this picture is because this lady, that's my teacher. She was my biology teacher. Till this day, I am so thankful to have her as my teacher because the biology class she taught, because all the knowledge she provided to me, I was so attracted to biology. I am so interested in all the insects, animals, cells, and living things. And I was naive and think, well, I'm just going to study animals and bugs. Then I don't need to talk to people. Well, guess what? Later in my life, I realized, well, no matter what you do, like Kim said, right? We work with people. That's the most important thing. So now I love to talk to people, right? Anyone, all the beekeepers, we love to work with them. So this is my college life started in 1995. I went to college. Of course, my major was biology. It's a dual major with biology and education. These are my dear roommates. So these are 8 girls, all from different parts of China. So that's me sitting there. But with all my roommates, and we live in a pretty small room, just like this kitchen area you can imagine, with 8 girls and 4 bunk beds. However, we bonded so much. They are like my sisters for me and forever friends. So in the college, I learned more about biology, learned more about all the systems. I am so fascinated. And I decided to go with animals. Why? Because I love animals. Like Tracy mentioned earlier, right, in her talk, bees are animals as well. So why are they so fascinating? Because animals, they are live, they move around, they have different behavior. Like in this picture, show you cute squirrels, dolphins, turtles, and chickens and monkeys. So they all have different innate behavior, and they can be learning new behavior. So all these are involved with their survival, with our environment, and this is why I feel I want to study them more. Well, so why do I study bees? It's all in the summer of 2010, or maybe the springtime of 2010. I finished my PhD and I went to University of Illinois to do postdoc, but I was still working on the flies. But one day I just learned there's a really famous professor at University of Illinois, and his lab study honeybees. So I started looking into honeybees. I mean, I know bees before, but I didn't really, think of that much. But however, after my PhD, I needed to find, I kind of want, okay, flies are interesting, but I wanted something like really cool, like really can give me aha moments and give me a lot of questions to ask. So this is why I started to study bees. Okay, so here's a video from National Geographic. If you haven't seen this, I really want to show to everyone. So this is why I want to show kids and I want to show everybody, adults, why bees are so fascinating. Just from the egg to larva to pupa, like in the video. So now this is pupa, pre-pupa stage. It's going metamorphosis. You can even see some burrow mites running in there. And the eyes are getting dark. And so this pupation is going to complete. And then you will see the adult bees come out. Yeah, so I know we all love bees. That's why we're here today. But from this video, I really want to show you, because I learned more about bees. They're pollinators. They're so important for agriculture. They have such a fascinating repertoire of social behavior. And so I decided, well, I'm going to try to get a meeting to meet Dr. G. Robinson, see if I can do postdoc with him. And we did have a meeting, and he's so fascinated about my interests. And yeah, so I started doing postdoc with Gene. So that was the 2010, starting in April. And with that, I had a fabulous 3 years of experience in his lab from 2010 to 2013. So in the lab, we study behavior. A lot of the research from the Illinois honeybee lab is study the molecular mechanisms underlying the social behavior of the bees. Now, one of the most famous behavior in the honeybees is the bee dance. Waggle, 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 right? Now we see all this really fascinating bee dance. This is the pioneer research in animal science, in animal behavior. And the researcher who discovered this, all the behavior and mechanisms behind it, is called Carl Windfrisch. He's an Austrian, and he did his research in Germany. And he and 2 other scientists all together won the Nobel Prize back in the 1970s because he's many years of research in this. So that's just one example. So in the next couple of slides in my talk, I'm going to show you different other social behavior of the honeybees. Well, so I get back to my outline, right? Set up your goals. And I think from Kim's talk, you heard getting PhD is not easy. And definitely I would address on that. It's not easy. But however, I think when you set up a goal, and no matter how difficult that is, but you imagine the time and the minute you accomplish, that is absolutely feels very good because you put all your time and all your efforts to work towards that goal. So with my determined to finish in my PhD within the 5 years, so I started my PhD in 2002. And for 5 years till 2007, I have published 9 papers, peer-reviewed publications with my professors, and also have 1 child also, and for my family. So I kind of like checkbox for all my important life events. They all happened in that few years. So here, that's my picture. I was pregnant with my first child at Purdue University. So I got my PhD from the Department of Entomology at Purdue University. That's in West Lafayette, Indiana. And when people talk about women in science, and often the together topic is how do you manage your work-life balance? And I wasn't think about it really that much. I was thinking, well, I want a family and I want a child, then yeah, then you just do all. But how do you do them? When they all, come to you, right? Oh yeah, that's a lot of, and then I realized, okay, well, I need a, this is something called a time management. So I need to think about what my time I put in, how I'm going to do it, right? So a lot of things to juggle, just like the picture showed here. For work, I'm so interested in doing science. For family, for my kid. So I started reading more books, and this is the one book. It's a Japanese physician doctor. She's a physician doctor, and she actually got enrolled to Harvard University for a master's degree of public health. However, before she went to Harvard, she's already had 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, and she was pregnant. So her whole family went to Harvard, and she got her degree, and she went back to Japan and continued working. And because all this, a lot of work, physician, right, doctors and surgeries, a lot of family duties as well. She wrote this book because, sorry, it's in Chinese. It said it because I don't have time, so I did everything. So I started to read this book and learned a lot of good tricks from her. And one thing she said, you definitely, important thing is calendar, calendar, and calendar. You mark your calendar, and she marked the calendar. She will go to bed at 8 p.m. and she will get up at 3 a.m. So she will use this time, she block her time, 1 hour to write the essay for Harvard application, 1 hour to, read more, study English for her exam, and then 1 hour to do documents, etc. So with this, I really learned from her to do my calendar and then start to realize I have these tasks to do on my to-do list. How am I going to do them? What are important for me? These tasks are all from different, focus and different places. So I have research, I have teaching, mentor students, write papers, reports, science communication, talk to beekeepers. Also, like as a faculty, work with the university as service in committees, administration, email, blah, blah, blah. However, so I think of them as big rocks, little pebbles, and sand. So your life is a bucket. Okay? So you wanted to think about every day, what am I going to focus on? What are my big rocks? For me, doing honeybee research, teaching, talk to beekeepers, all these are my big rocks. These are the things that are my high priority, very important. I wanted to achieve these goals. So what are the pebbles and sands? If you think about all the tasks you have, and then you kind of put your big rocks in the bucket first. And then you put a small pebbles in there, in between. And then you put a sand as tasks going down the list, and then you fill up the time, right? So that's all about set priorities, what you want to achieve in the goal, and how you're going to do them. I know it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. Well, I'm going to tell you how to do them. And so this is Illinois. And like I mentioned, I work with Gene Robinson, started bee research. Also, really, I was active to try to obtain more funding for my research. Like, you probably heard talks, and research funding is really hard to do, especially for postdocs. When you try to secure your salary and continue in doing science, it is hard. But I was able to get a fellowship. It's from the American Association of University Women. They really kindly provided me 1 year salary for my postdoc from 2012 to 13 because I have already had my first daughter and I was pregnant with the second child. So here's a picture of me being pregnant again, and then my daughter holding, it's 34 weeks of the baby, right? But at the same time, I think I definitely love my postdoc research. Like by looking at my whole scientific career, besides the current time doing research, my really peak enjoy time, I really enjoy doing research, it was doing postdoc. And we work with the Gene Robinson's lab. We were able to publish a really high impact journal scientific paper to study the epigenetics and molecular mechanisms of the honeybee genes and try to study how these genes and DNAs affect the bees in a way. And so we also study aggression. So team up with another researcher. So we kind of merged both projects together and published a big paper to study how the socially responsive effects of brain in the phosphorylation pathway and how is that pathway affect aggression. So another thing I learned after my postdoc, I really wanted to continue to do my research. And when the time for me to come to find the jobs, I realized like all the scientists, just not only women or female, male, female, all of them have to be mobile, So I kind of move around. This is my map here. I got my PhD from Indiana at Purdue and then went to Illinois, study postdoc at University of Illinois. And then I want to continue my bee research. So that's why I moved to North Carolina. So that was in the year of 2014. So I got to move to North Carolina, started work with David Tarpey at North Carolina State University. So it's slightly different in the research is because at Gene Robinson's lab at Illinois, a lot of fundamental and basic research. But I love to work with bees and love to work with beekeepers. I wanted to start to look at applied research. How are we can use the scientific tools and resources to help beekeepers? How can we solve the disease and problems in the honeybee colonies? So that's why in 2014, I moved to North Carolina, started work with David Tarpey. At North Carolina, I started to give a lot of talks to beekeepers at different states. And in the same time, I also continue to write grants. So this is actually a little sequencer. So I do a lot of genomic study to study the genes and molecular biology of honeybees. So I wrote a little essay. This is like a small proposal. They only require, I think, 500 words. So write a 500 words blurb. How are you going to use this sequencer to do your research? And so I kind of just wrote it in like one afternoon, and I told them this is a company called Illumina. So I told the Illumina company, you are in California. I think it's San Diego, California. And I'm in North Carolina, right? So in addition to a sequencer, they also said, we're going to give you a Mini Cooper, a little car as well for the grand prize. So I said in the essay, I'm going to drive my little Mini Cooper and I'm going to decorate with all the bee decorations, you know, like Kim's garage door. So we're going to make a bee Mini Cooper. And I'm going to put a campaign for pollinators. And I'm going to drive this Mini Cooper all the way from East Coast, North Carolina, all the way to California. We do a cross-country campaign for pollinators. And I'm going to use a sequencer to study the honeybee viruses. And then one day I got an email in my inbox, and they're like, congratulations. I'm like, what? What? And like, yeah, you won the second place for this grant, for this grand challenge. I'm like, really? Wait, did I get a Mini Cooper? And they're like, well, no, I don't have a Mini Cooper for you. And the Mini Cooper went to a mosquito scientist. Because that guy, he's a professor at University of Florida. And he said, yeah, I'm going to use the Mini Cooper as a scientific equipment. And we're going to go to Florida, drive around to collect mosquito samples to study Zika. And here's a paper to show you the windshield wipers of the car can be used as a scientific tool. That is real. And I was like, wow, really? Okay, well, second prize is still good. So I win a sequencer that was $50,000. So yeah, that's the guy who studied the mosquito at Florida. And so I'm second place. So he's a professor. I'm a postdoc. And the third place went to a student. So she's a student from UK, study breast cancer. So all of us want to sequence, you know, different things. But I'm glad two of them are bugs or entomology. But anyway, that's just a little story. What I want to tell you is, right? So my goal is to do research, and I'm able to get more funding and more equipment to do research. And so in 2017, I started my own research lab at Central State University. So we are actually the first 1890 land-grant university in the state of Ohio. We are also historically Black college and university. In our student population, we have 99.9% are African American students. We have 81% on the Pell Grant. A lot of the first generation college students come to study on our campus. So our lab opened the door on August 1st, 2017. So yeah, it's been 5 years now. So our lab focuses mainly on the functional genomics that's related to a lot in molecular biology, genes in the bees. We study gene and behavior. We also study pathogenic stress and immunity in the honeybees. So the tissues involved are a lot of in the brain, and we also study the different environmental factors. So when we started in 2017, we actually started working with a lot of Ohio beekeepers. We wanted to study the mite biting behavior in the honeybees. So if you're not familiar with the mite biting behavior, is one type of grooming behavior, and it's a trait that we can actually select when the mites in a colony move around. So a honeybee worker can actually recognize that mite, and then they will grab the mite, use their mandibles to chew the mite and try to get rid of, right? So a lot of times these mites, when they're chewed off, their legs are missing, then they have their body fluid or their hemolymph will come out, and these mice will die. Eventually they will drop to the bottom board of the honeybee hives. So we have students work with us to collect mites from the colonies, and we'll look at the honeybees in the hive, measure their mite biting behavior by looking at the mites collected. So we start to study the mandibles of the honeybees because that's where the mouth part the bees use to chew the bees. And we wondered if we look at the feral colonies, those are wild honeybee colonies surviving the wild without any management from the human, compared to the package bees or commercial bees, will we see any difference? And we're collaborating with Purdue University. So Purdue has started doing this breeding program on selecting the high mite biting bees since more than a decade ago with Dr. Greg Hunt's lab, and now it's Greg Harper's lab, and also their technician, Crispin Given. So actually working with Purdue together, we collect the bees from Purdue, we collect the bees from commercial honeybees in Ohio, and we compare. So we actually compare their mandibles. And each bee has a pair of mandible, and we use a HeLa-Scan, that's a micro CT scanner. Just like you go to hospital to look at your bones, look at your legs, any bones they need to scan you, that's the same thing, like a micro CT scanner. So the video showed a zoom in, really three-dimensional a view of the honeybee mandible. And when you look really in detail, you can see this is actually inside of a honeybee mandible. And these are edges, so we call them a short edge or the long edge here. And within, in the middle of the mandible inside, there are actually a bunch of hooks in there. And together with the hooks, there are also a lot of hairs in here. So this whole mandible, if you look at, they're kind of like a spoon. But two mandibles together, you can imagine it's like a Caesar, like a scissors together working. So what we found is we have published a paper now to show between the Purdue high biting bees and the Ohio commercial bees, there's a significant difference for the length of the edge. And I think it's the long edge here. So for the high biting bees, we're seeing this change of shorter and shorter of this long edge. And in a way, I guess an easier way to understand it is that you can think of the scissors, right? The scissors of the bees they have. We're seeing the high mite biting bees are getting kind of smaller, right? So now, yeah, we have another paper almost ready to submit to a journal. And we're looking at the Ohio commercial bees, Purdue high biting, and then Ohio feral colonies, as well as the Apis cerana, so that's Asian honeybees. And so the picture here is showing you Apis cerana down here. So this is Apis mellifera. That's all the bees we have in the U.S., European honeybees. So that's the Apis dorsata. So that's a giant honeybee. But we're able to collect the mandibles from Apis cerana, who's already a varroa resistance by now. And we compare scan all these mandibles, and we see a trend now that the commercial bees have, can you imagine the biggest scissors, right? The Apis cerana has smaller scissors. And we're seeing a trend of the high biting bees are in between. So they are changing. At least the shape of their mandibles are changing in a way. So another project in our lab is to study aggression. So besides waggle dance, besides grooming, my biting behavior, I'm also interested in aggression. All of us know killer bees, and killer bees are so aggressive. And so my question to ask here is, why are they so aggressive? And we study it by doing reciprocal crosses. What that means is who's their mom and who's their dad, right? So we have crosses that are from Africanized honeybee dad and the African honeybee mom. That's one type of cross we'll do. And then the opposite cross is a European honeybee mom and then an Africanized honeybee dad, right? So that's a typical way in genetics to study the behavior, study the traits, and what make them with this type of behavior. And this is a collaboration with Juliana Rango at Texas A&M, because in Texas they have killer bees. She can go drive around to collect the killer bee colonies, and they're able to do the insemination and these processes. But it's really fascinating. We have our results now. What we did is to sequence all these bees. Who's their mom and who's their dad, we know. And then we know when the Africanized honeybee is the dad, they actually reproduce more aggressive offspring compared to the other cross. Okay? So basically, I want to study if Africanized honeybees are your dad, you have mean dad, then how do you get the mean kid? By dissecting their genetic, mechanism. So our lab also do research on the queen quality and queen cells. So this is one project to study the 48-hour queen cell supported by the SARA grant, Sustainable Agriculture for Research Education from USDA. What we did is before the COVID, so that we started in 2018, 2019, we hold workshops with the Ohio beekeepers. We teach them about 48-hour queen cells, teach them how to make swarm traps, and teach them how to catch swarm traps, and show them how to use a microscope to look at the mites under the microscopes to see if they have missing legs, right? So with that way, we wanted to work with the beekeepers and to show them that if you have a high biting colony, you can see the mites missing from those mites in the colony, then you have good traits to select in this behavior and from this colony. So our university have stocks with a high biting. Well, we did a grafting and we provided 48-hour queen cells with their genetics. We dispersed to different beekeepers, really want to promote them to diversify the genetics in their bee yard. So within the last 5 years, so this slide told you 10 students, but by now I can tell you since 2017 till now, our lab has trained 33 students, and almost 70% of them are African American students, and more than 55% are females. And we also trained 3 high school senior students, 5 middle school students in our lab. So the pictures here just show you, this is Jayla. She was my first research student, undergraduate research student. And she did a really fantastic job looking at mice under the microscopes and showing on the computer here. So we published the first paper with her as a co-author. She's the first author for the mandible study from the micro-CT scanning. So this is also Jayla and also Brad. Those two are my students. We went to Purdue University for the HHBBC event. So that's the Harlan Honeybee Breeding Co-op. Work with the beekeepers in the yard, catch the drones, and learn about breeding. That's my student Rohan. So he studied molecular biology, and now he's in med school. So it's really lucky to work with all these students in our lab. We also have a lot of visitors from high schools to come to learn about our program, our research, what is 1890 land grant research. We have a middle school summer camp. These are summer camp students. They actually came to our lab went under the microscope and look at the mice, and they were so fascinating. And so we took them to the bee yard. And the first time we went there, we provided all the bee suits, but that day was hot. So all 4 of them, there's also a girl, so 5 of them. It ended up only this kid stood in the bee yard with me. And everybody else was like, this is too hot. I'm going to go back to the truck and sit in the air conditioning. So I said, okay, that's okay. You know, I know some of you are afraid of bees. It takes time. But that was our first visit. So by the 3rd time, we went to the bee yard again. So they had about, I think it's 2 weeks of summer camp. Every one of them can open the hive. They have their bee suits on. They pull out the frames and look at the bees, and they know what the queen looked like. And I was so happy. So just within 2 weeks of time, I can totally transform them and show them how interesting it was to study honeybees. So that was totally a very successful story. This is our student Zarin. So Zarin is from Bahamas. He's an international student. He worked with me for 2.5 years of his 4 years at Central State University. And he's able to work on the manuscripts with me. And so he's a co-author and first author of 3 papers we have published so far. So I just want to show you with our university, the new land grant support and our growing campus and our growing students, we are very, very happy to be able to train students, to show them the science in the bee biology. This is our lab before COVID. So that's some Rohan, Zarin, that's Kayla, Grace, and me. She's a high school student. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. Like I said, one of my main box is to, do research and teaching. So I love teaching. I just feel really rewarding and fulfilled when I see all these students learn and grow with the knowledge every day. So I also did a podcast, because nowadays everybody listen to podcasts, no matter you drive or, do your chores or before you go to night. So in North Carolina, we have this weekly seminar, and all these really great scientists come in to give seminar talks. So I kind of just asked them after the seminar when they have time, if they were still there on the day, like, can I interview you? And I want to talk about today's event, how you get to be a scientist and what's the fun part of doing science, what's not the fun part. So I was able to actually interview, I think it's 12 scientists in that year. It was all 2015 and 16. So yeah, so that was really fascinating. And I think at Central State, I still want to do more podcasts, and I want to interview more students and faculty to talk about our land grant research. So just give you a break, and this is what the life looks like for a researcher, right? For a scientist, you have 1 minute or a few hours on the computer, try to adjust the figure scaling and work on the figures for hours. And you're thinking, 10-point font or 10.5 font. So, but all these small things, but they take so much time. And this is why writing a paper is hard. It takes a lot of time. Okay, so another frame of time you can see it's cross-country speaking, right? Just like all of our speakers yesterday and today, they will fly, they will drive, they will get to where they need to go to talk about their science and their research they're passionate about. This is Bob sleeping. So on the airplane, when you sit down, the minute you sit down, probably next minute you're already zooming and sleeping in there. Try to get some power nap. And the last one is like my favorite. Like you always feel guilty, like curling under your desk. That just kind of the part in academia, right? Every day I'm like, oh, I should be writing, work on my paper, work on my paper. But anyway, so another part I want to say is always learn. Like being a woman, study science. Same, being a man, study science is not easy. You always want to learn learn new things. So I learned this from my aunt. So when she was 30, she started learning Japanese. She can't afford to go to a university or school to study Japanese. What she did is to buy this tapes. On the tape, there's a book, like printing material come with it. And she started learning Japanese. And I was so little, but I was like, oh, wait, what are you learning? And she's like, Japanese. Like, what? Really? How do you say good morning? And she tell me, Ohayo gozaimasu. That's how I learned my first Japanese word. And then later, I went to Germany in, I think it was 2015. But during my master's study, I also studied Germany for a year because we had to read old German papers from the 1920s. And so I learned German, learned Japanese, I know Chinese, and now I'm in the US since 2002, so I can speak English. But I think all these are actually help me to grow. It's probably good for my brain. So in addition to all the molecular skills I have in the research, I started to learn more coding. I'm more, digital language, technologies. I realized data science is the future of where we're going. If we don't know how to do data analysis, we don't know the data we sequence that we get, then we won't get to anywhere. So I started to learn coding, Python, data science, so all these tools. And so the next thing, the second to the last point is group support. What I want to say is everyone is an individual, yes, but to be mentally healthy, to be physically healthy, you wanted to have a whole network of support for yourself. For example, if you're a beekeeper, then you wanted to have someone you can talk to talk about your beekeeping difficulties, right? You have beekeeping problems, ask our bee inspector, ask your friends, your beekeeping club, associations. If you are at work, if you're a part-time beekeeper, you have a daytime job, then, somebody you can talk about your school issue, your work issue. And if you have difficulties, you can have someone to talk to. You can talk about your home issues, nominate you for awards, and writing letters for your career, and help for a family emergency. So a lot of time I didn't know this until I went to a workshop for the Animal Behavior Society. They organized this workshop in a meeting in Chicago. So I went to the workshop and they're like, this is called pop circle, and this is called a group support. And when you look at each individual who is very successful, no matter on what type of career, what type of job they have, that's not just one person. You're looking at the whole group of support behind that person, right? So from that was an aha moment. I'm like, oh yeah, so I need to find out the support for myself. So there's a paper here. This is a paper to look at all the scientific publications from 1955 to 2010. And these are 1.5 million authors. They're either male or female. And they're from 83 countries and 13 different scientific disciplines. So what they found is they look at the data of women in science. How good a job are we doing to recruit women into science? Very good job. A lot of women are going to science to study as students since the 1950s. However, how good are we at retaining women in science? Not very good. And so they show the data here. The y-axis is the gender gap in the total productivity. For example, how many papers published, right? In the x-axis, this is gender gap in career length, how long the person can stay in their career. So the A figure is look at different disciplines. Out of 13 disciplines, there's a 0%. If it's 0%, it means no difference between men and women. They have a gender equality. But if it's a negative, the more negative it goes, it means more better for men. So we look at biology is the almost the worst here. I mean biology. So basically in biology, the career length for women is shorter, 20% shorter than men. And you look at the total productivity, it's almost 38% less than men. Then the B figure here, they look at a same gender gap in career length and the gender gap in the total productivity. They look at countries. These are 83 countries here. And US is in this dot. So again, 0 means gender equality, means no difference here. And so this is 0% for the total productivity and 0% for the career length. So when you look at USA, men's actually work, longer, much longer, 20% longer than men. And their productivity is 40 some 50% more than women. So now I really want to move to Uzbekistan, which will have the longest for women career in these, and then the most productivity. So one Nobel Prize winner who's a female, and she actually started an award to help more women scientists to free up their time from household chores. And in this article, they said, so they were committed researchers, right? Their children were in full-time care during the workday, but those later hours, when the male peers and female colleagues without children were squeezing extra reading and research, women with children were washing dishes, doing laundry that pile up during the week. They were staying home for conferences because they have no overnight childcare. They're exhausted, demoralized. Some were abandoning their scientific goals in favor of careers that better accommodated the daily grind of family life. So because this Nobel Prize winner, her name is Nuselan Volhard, so she started a foundation with the goal, I will have these awards and pay really outstanding women scientists, so they don't need to do all these chores. Yeah. So you can see there's, for women, there's their career, their research and work, but in addition, they have unpaid family responsibilities. They have to take care of either their parents or their children. So that's additional, tasks on them. So anyway, this slide will show you a researcher in psychology. His name is Tal Ben-Shahar. So he studied positive psychology. And I started looking into positive psychology when I was at Illinois. So basically to tell you, your life is your choice. You are the one can make your life happy, not anybody else, right? So he told his story by a negative view, and then he told his story in the class by a positive view. And that totally opened my eye. It's the same guy, same life, but by which angle you look at it. And that's really make me to learn about positive psychology and learn about yoga. And so I started to do yoga, started to do meditation, and try to tell myself I can do this. So anyway, all these are the things I want you to remember. Hopefully you remember them. The most important thing is be happy. I cannot do any of my research and things without the support of all these wonderful people and the institutions. So with that, thank you so much.